Як настрій, колеги? Говори.
Шановний пане посол, сьогодні у нас унікальна можливість. Я зразу вас закликаю дивитися на безпеку протокол, тому що мені зробив пан посол зауваження, що занадто такого дипломатичного протоколу, яка є можна спілкувати. Тому зразу вас закликаю до відкритості, до щирості, задавайте будь-які питання. Латвіян, стоянець, Юріса, ректор, Український, національний, університет. Шановні дорогі студенти, шановний пане посол, я маю за честь вам, шановні колеги, представити надзвичайного та повноважного посла Латвійської Республіки в Україні Юріса Пойканса. Я дуже радий, що пан посол знайшов час, щоб відвідати наш університет і зустрітися із студентами. Його була основна вимога, його був слав, я хочу почути голос України. Тому, пане посол, вам слово. Будь ласка.
Дякую. Я дуже радий сьогодні з вами зустрітися. Я вважаю, що буду говорити англійською мовою, але якщо будуть запитання українською мовою, я зможу відповісти. Тому що я хотів би сказати декілька слів, я трошки боюся, що я не зможу це зробити українською мовою. Dear friends, I'm very happy to be in your university today and share, I would say, I don't want to deliver a lecture, but I would like to share my thoughts where Latvia and Ukraine currently are in the geopolitical map of Europe. I have huge appreciation for what your country is doing in resisting aggression from Russia. I think the key question Ukraine is struggling is to be an independent country, to live according to your wishes, your traditions, like you want to live. The Baltic states are being challenged also by challenge from the east, but in comparison with you, I think from Russia's point of view, the Baltic states have always been a bit different in their understanding. President Putin and his entourage really believes that Russians, Ukrainians, and the Russians are one nation. This is the key driving force why he wants to undermine the Ukrainian independence. I think he understands that the western part of Ukraine is different, but when it comes to Kyiv, Odessa, Kharkiv, Zaporizhia, other cities in different parts of Ukraine, he truly believes that Ukraine is a part of so-called Ruski Mir. And if you look at Ruski Mir, what has been created in Donetsk and Lugansk, we see what kind of problems are being brought actually to this part of Ukraine. So your key task for Ukraine is to remain independent, to remain strong. You have plenty of problems inside Ukraine. Ukraine is really different. We spoke with the rector. You have the western part of Ukraine, Ternopil, Ivano-Frankivsk, Lviv. Those regions who were strongly in favor of independence at the beginning of the 90s. But you have other parts of Ukraine who think in a different way, unfortunately. So, and if you look at the last result of regional elections in October last year, you can see that, for example, Opposition Platforma za Życie, they can obtain a lot of votes in the eastern regions of Ukraine. Not in Ternopil, obviously, not in Lviv, but in other parts. So people think in a different way. You you had recently a parliamentarian elected in the parliament of Ukraine, allegedly having a Russian passport. So the country, in its intentions, ideas, is divided. The second is Ukraine, like Latvia, lacks stateful traditions. And stateful traditions we are both not used to be independent. Historically, you have been pushed strongly from the West, from the Poles, Catholics. In Latvia, this is from Germans, and from the East, from Russians. So as a result, the Ukrainian independence today is only 30 years, like in Latvia. As a result, it's extremely difficult to manage and govern the country because you expect or evade some instructions or orders or advice coming from the capital. If you look at the geopolitical opponents of Ukraine, Russia is a very strong country with very strong stateful traditions. So this is an extremely serious problem. So besides, as I was saying, Ukraine being divided with weak stateful traditions, it's a serious problem. The third issue, but from my point of view is important for Ukraine, is we are all coming from the Soviet system. This difficult heritage. But in Ukraine, this heritage has been much more difficult, let's say, in the Baltic states than in Visegrad countries. Corruption, oligarchy, all these factors hinder the development of Ukraine. So we are in a difficult situation, when it comes to Ukraine, but there is definitely light at the end of the tunnel. At first, I think the biggest success of 2014, you were able to survive. You lost the Crimea temporarily. You lost Donbas, I believe, also temporarily. But the border today, the administrative border you have, it's much farther to the east than many would have expected. I think many people in Moscow and other places were expecting that Kharkov would fall, Odessa would fall, so you were able to survive. I'm meeting a lot of Ukrainians who are saying, I changed my mind since 2014. I was thinking we are a part of the same Russian world, but now I feel it as Ukrainian. So Ukrainian national identity has been strengthened, and this is very important. Maybe for Ternopil, you had it already at the beginning of 90s, but for many people in the region Kharkiv, this might be some kind of new revelation. And I think it's very important that your interest in joining the European Union and NATO has been put into the Constitution of Ukraine as a national priority. We did it in 1995. Okay, we didn't put it into the Constitution, but we signed the political declaration. You did it just a couple of years ago. This is different 24, 25 years. From my point of view, Ukraine cannot remain neutral. Either you are a part of Юридический экономический союз, or you are a part of the European Union. Neutrality in general in Europe nowadays is a very big exception. You have Switzerland, where you have historical neutrality. You have Sweden having neutrality since the beginning of the 19th century. You might be having neutrality like Finland and Austria, signed in accordance with international agreements. But even in case of Finland, Austria, and Sweden, these are all part of the European Union. So my conviction is that Ukraine doesn't have any other option but to join the European Union and NATO one day, because maybe you are much bigger than Sweden or Finland, but having such a geopolitical opponent as Russia, you don't have any other option. In addition, looking at the infrastructure of Ukraine, the western part of Ukraine, I see what the European Union has brought to Latvia. Because many people believe this is just a political project. Poland receives, during 7 years, which is like budgetary period of the European Union, around 80 billion euros in general. the development of their own country. So the European Union is not only about politics, it's only about it's also about economic development, and this is something where Ukraine can gain a lot. It might be critical of the European Union, but at the end of the day, this is a union which is based on voluntary basis. In theory, we are all equal. Both Germany and Latvia have one vote. Obviously, the European Parliament, it's a bit different. You have more parliamentarians for Germany, more for France, less for Latvia, but the European Union doesn't impose any principles of your national identity, on your national language, on your religion. So it's a freedom of choice. We have Orthodox countries in the European Union, we have Catholic countries, Protestant countries, but united by the joint vision of Europe. So from my point of view, there is no other choice. I think the western part of Ukraine, and this is coming back to my previous point, has a special responsibility for the future of Ukraine. Why? You are a part of the Austro-Hungarian, Polish, Ukrainian cultural heritage. You know what Europe means, what kind of importance it has. Many parts of Ukraine have not had this opportunity to be so close to Europe like you have been. Yesterday I spoke with the rector. I believe probably it's extremely difficult for a Western Ukrainian to become the president of Ukraine, because usually people would vote for someone from the, say, your own region. So from my point of view, this is always representative of central part of Ukraine, who is not like division in the east or the west. But I think having your historical experience, having your cultural links with Europe, you are much better suited in integrating in Europe than other parts of Ukraine. This is your special responsibility. I can absolutely understand there are different national heroes in the western part of Ukraine in comparison. I don't have a good reply here. Bandera, Shukevich are perceived differently in the western part of Ukraine, in the eastern part of Ukraine. My feeling is, these historical personalities should never become a divisive issue for the country of Ukraine. I think heroes should be respected. If Bandera is popular in Lviv, in Ternopil, he should be respected here. If he is not popular in Kharkiv, in Dnipro, there are no ways to impose these historical personalities. It's more as a question about creating a national Ukrainian identity which is suitable for everyone. I don't see any serious problems here, but being representatives from Ternopil, from the western part of Ukraine, from my point of view, it's very important to take into account feelings of other people living in the rest of the territory of Ukraine. So all in all, being in Lviv and being in Ternopil, having a walk today this morning, I don't see a big difference between Latvia and Ukraine. Yes, we have maybe more money from the EU, more support from the EU, but otherwise we are very similar. But you have this historical task and mission to bring these values gradually to the rest part of Ukraine. To make Ukraine more European, having Ukraine a more European identity, keeping in mind the Holodomor actually ruined lives of millions of Ukrainians. In Donbass, 100 years ago, you had people in Ukrainian Vyshyvanka. Today, it's much more difficult to find it. So, you were able to keep your Ukrainian identity here. So, this is your task, how to keep it for the rest of Ukraine. And the last, nowadays, we have a lot of discussion. Many Ukrainians are asking, why we are not a member of the European Union? Why we are not a member of NATO? These are very relevant and legitimate questions. But, please, never give up. 15 years ago, when we were on the path of becoming a member of the European Union, many Europeans were telling, you might become a member of the European Union, but not a member of NATO. So we face the same situation be working very hard and never lose your hope. I'm absolutely sure that in our lifetime, we will see Ukraine becoming at least member of the European Union. NATO is a different question. But for the European Union, I believe in Ukraine, which is a part of United Europe. So even if you don't get these clear signals now, it doesn't mean that you don't have these signals. You don't have this perspective. I'm absolutely sure that the Lisbon Agreement, Article 49 clearly states any European state can join the European Union. So never lose hope. All the best to you, and I will be very happy to answer any of your questions.
Шановний пане посол, шановні друзі. Юріс Пойканса сьогодні показав всім нам приклад. Яким чином людина дипломатичного рівня вільно володіє українською мовою і вільно володіє історією нашої країни. Спілкуючись з ним, я відчув, наскільки глибоко він знає і українську добу козацтва, і українську добу українського народу Республіки, 1918 рік і втрачені шанси України. Ну і він підходить до розуміння нашого націоналізму і патріотизму, чимось не спільні країни Україна і країни Балтики, і, зокрема, Латвії. Тоді студенти, я звертаюся до вас, у вас унікальна можливість зараз задати питання і з перших уст, з уст дипломатичного представника дружньої нам країни Латвії, почути саме те, що вас цікавить. Я запрошую до дискусії. Бачите, ми спеціально відчитали для того, щоб ближче бути до вас.
Це найважливіше, тому що читати лекцію це не цікаво. Я хотів би почути ваше враження, які питання у вас є.
Так. Хто бажає задати питання? Будь ласка. Розкажіть, скільки як вас звати?
Доброго дня, я студентка другого курсу. У мене таке питання. Латвія, як і Україна, є колишнім членом СРСР. Але Латвія зараз має розвинену економіку. Країна займає високі місця в індексах громадських свобод, демократичних управліннях, є членом ЄС, НАТО і не тільки. В яких сферах в першу чергу потрібні зміни в Україні для досягнення такого результату? Дякую.
Each of our own problems. Let's say we are not ideal country at this moment, but what helped us? The question you should answer yourself is who you are. We, at the beginning of 90s, were knowing we are Latvians. We want to safeguard our independence. That's why in 1995 we decided we are moving towards the European Union. In Ukraine, I think the key challenge is still is many people are saying this is corruption, this is justice system, but I think the key issue is understanding that you are Ukrainian and you are a part of the European family. That you are not Malorossi or let's say one nation is Russian. I think this is what helps us is understanding your historical mission. Obviously, in Thermopylae, I don't have any doubts. You understand who you are. But as I was telling, I think your mission is to bring also this feeling of Ukraineness also to other parts. So from my point of view, it's the creation of the nation state, which is in the process now in Ukraine, is the key task. Not fighting corruption or anything else. Because this is very important. But from my point of view, when the whole nation will be able to say that we are moving towards the European Union, I think this is the biggest success. This is what we did at the beginning of the 90s. At the end of the 80s of the last century, when we were fighting for independence, we were gathering thirds of the nation on, let's say, national rallies for independence. In your case, yes, indeed, Ivano-Frankivsk, Ternopil probably were in the lead. But you are just a part of Ukraine, maybe a small part of Ukraine. So, from my point of view, in 2014, what happened? You lost temporarily your territories, but for many Ukrainians, they obtained this sense of belonging to the Ukrainian nation. Russian identity. This is the creation of Ukrainian state and strengthening of the Ukrainian nation for languages, which is the most important. If you will be able to do it, you will be able also to fight other problems, which is oligarchs or, let's say, corruption, things like that.
Хто бажає? Так, будь ласка, вам слово.
Hi, my name is Tanya. I'm a freshman. So in our country we have a lot of discussion about question of language. And I want to ask, I know that after the collapse of Soviet Russia, most people gained Latvian citizenship due to naturalization through knowledge of the language. Meanwhile, in Ukraine, there have never been any special conditions under which people could get a citizenship. In your opinion, how does the language issue affect the unity of the Ukrainians, and what do we need for better unity and mutual understanding, and how it influences language issue on different question of our country? Thank you.
It's a very good question. And you know, it's quite interesting when I'm being asked in some TV or radio discussions concerning the role of Ukrainian language, I always feel that there is a Latvian experience, there is Hungarian experience, there is Ukrainian experience. Ukrainian is actually bilingual. People can speak both languages equally. In the, let's say, educational system maybe transferred to Ukrainian, but during breaks, kids are speaking Russian, and that was there. I cannot provide any advice. If, let's say, I would speak as a Latvian, I would say the key role is strengthening the Ukrainian language in every possible direction, which is actually happening in Ternopil, Rivne, Lviv. But then, at the end of the day, it's a very big question. How we define the Ukrainian language? Is the lack of Ukrainian language? I think yes, but he speaks Russian. He says Kharkiv, for example, from the Ruski myth. So my reply to that is, given these historical differences, linguistic differences, I would opt for strengthening the Ukrainian state, the Ukrainian identity, but not necessarily meaning the Ukrainian language. Why? I think it would be quite naive to think that, there's an active people who speak Ukrainian even in 10 years from now. It's not going to happen. But the Ukrainian state has legitimate rights to strengthen the role of the Ukrainian language, obviously, politically, economically, linguistically. But I think rights of all people should be respected. One thing that I always hear that the Russians are complaining that the role of the Russian language is undermined in Ukraine. If it's true, why there are no protests in Kharkiv, Odessa, Dnipro, where people will be going out with banners and saying that we are feeling oppressed? It's a very simple answer. People living in these parts of Ukraine understand it's beneficial for their kids to learn Ukrainian, study Ukrainian. Even in your political leadership, I know, very often the native language is Russian, but people will speak Ukrainian officially and in some other events. So, from my point of view, the Ukrainian language shouldn't be imposed. But believe me, with the Ukrainian state becoming stronger, the role of the Ukrainian language will grow. It's absolute reality. I was in Rivne a month ago, and I was asking people which language you spoke in the Soviet times. They said 50-50 in general, in Rivne. What about now? It's 90 Ukrainian, 10 in Russian. So this is how the Ukrainian state has transformed, let's say, this dimension. So, as I was telling, it's extremely difficult to provide any good answers or any good advice. But if I were Ukrainian, I would try to embrace all people of the country without specifying which language they are talking. The key issue is, people are dying in the east of Ukraine very often, being predominantly very often Russian-speaking people. So they are giving their lives for the sake of Ukraine. And at the same time, as I was saying, we live in the not least written fiction. Not the language. No historical personality should become an exhibition. This is from my point of view. That's why when many Western colleagues are asking why Ukrainians are praising Mandela, I've always told them, I'm not the person who is going to impose national heroes on any part of the Ukrainian society. If Mandela is a hero, is not. In England, Francis, I'm going to raise any concerns about that. So, from my point of view, in this specific historical period, the key question is about strengthening Ukrainian state. Ukrainian language, Princeton Mova, it will come anyway to follow the development of the Ukrainian state.
Доброго дня, Курова Мар'яна, студентка третього курсу. Які ви бачите пріоритетні напрямки співпраці між Латвійською Республікою і Україною зараз? Дякую.
I think the key issue what we see is we understand this injustice Ukraine suffered in 2014. When your neighbor, our neighbor, took a part of the territory of the different country. International law is extremely important for countries like Latvia and Ukraine. Why? If we return, let's say, to the situation where no international law will prevail, we will end up as in the Second World War. The countries are occupied, disappearing. So international law is extremely important. This is the first that I see we should support, and we are supporting, the territorial integrity and sovereignty of the Ukrainian state. This is the Latvia's national interest. In the international arena, what we are doing, very often, what can Latvia do bilaterally? Very little. Yes, we support Ukraine, we have business. Our president will come to the opening of the Crimean platform, but what we can really do is influence decision-making in European structures and in Europe, Atlantic, for example, parliamentary structures. Let's say we have a special Crimean support group in NATO Parliamentary Assembly. One of the creators of the Crimean platform group is Latvian parliamentarian. Council of Europe, we are cooperating with the Parliamentary Assembly really a lot. So I think the key task of Latvian diplomacy is not only develop bilateral ties with Ukraine, but support Ukraine in the international organization where you don't have access. For example, in Brussels, European Union. We have monthly meetings of foreign ministers of the European Union. Obviously, our foreign minister will speak about Ukraine. So he will speak in the presence of French, German, Portuguese foreign ministers. Doesn't mean they will change their mind immediately, but we have this platform where we can raise those issues which are important for you. So, the key task, I think, for our diplomacy is to support Ukraine in the international arena. And I think we have reached a very good level of cooperation.
Thank you.
My greetings to you, dear Mr. Ambassador. My name is Victoria. I'm a fourth-year student of international law, and my question is about fear. Sigmund Freud said that the fear is one of the things that can rule a person. And my question is, do you think the fear is an efficient way to overcome some problems in Ukraine? Do you think that the person should be scared to break the law, to commit some crimes, to make our country better in that way? So what is your position about this theory, I would say? Thank you.
The rule of law, from my point of view, is the key task Ukrainians and Latvians are striving for. And I think the key obstacle for the development of Ukraine is a lack of chance, from my point of view. My feeling is that what Ukraine is lacking sometimes, I get the feeling, you are lacking modern Atatürk, like in the Turkish nation, in a way. The person who transferred the country. Obviously, his heritage now is being challenged in Turkey, in other parts, but if breaking the law serves some further ultimate aim, let's say justice, sorry to say, maybe it's very non-diplomatic, I think we should be trying to do that. I think at the end of the day is without having the rule of law, Ukrainians will be losing faith in their country, this is number one, which will be very bad for the future of your country. So, looking at the President Zelensky, I truly believe, maybe not having experience when he became the president, I think he truly wants to transform the country. Whether he's successful or not is a different thing. But from my point of view, it's you should have a real break with the past. And if this is done politically, sometimes at the expense of the rule of law, sorry to say, I might be supportive of that.
Наші іноземні студенти.
Absolutely.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Chris, a second-year student of international relations. I would like to ask if there is any relationship between Latvia and Africa, and in particular my country, Rwanda, and if there is any what's the contribution of Latvia to the development of African countries. Thank you.
Sorry, from which country you are?
Rwanda.
Rwanda. I would say we are making first steps in the direction of Africa, Latvia as a country. We don't have any historical ties and relations. In the 17th century, there was a duchy of Kurland, which occupied the current part of Latvia. We had a small colony in the country of Gambia. But let's say, unlike French, Brits, Germans, we don't have any historical tradition. We currently have only one embassy on the African continent, which is not even really Africa, it's Egypt. It's a part of the wider Middle East. I know that our northern neighbors, Estonians, are opening an embassy in Kenya, which from my point of view is a very, I would say, bold move. We know very little, and we don't have any African embassy, by the way, in Riga apparently. Here in Riga, there are not so many. South Africa, Nigeria, Egypt, okay, Arab countries quite many, but let's say if you go sub-Saharan Africa, really just a couple of embassies, only big states. So this is something where we have not invested a lot and we are lacking knowledge. We strive to become a non-permanent member of the United Nations Security Council for the year of 2025. And by the way, the United Nations Security Council is actually Africa, which is dominating a lot of issues there with water and things like that. So we will need to learn much more about Africa than we are doing now. We are obviously in a very disadvantaged position, even in comparison with Finland, Sweden, or Denmark, those countries which are providing a lot of development assistance. We are not doing that because we are not a rich country. So at this moment, I would say so, our foreign policy is developing, and I'm quite sure we will expand our presence in Africa, because without expansion of presence, we will never be able to understand in general what's going on there. This is a region which is always internationally been underestimated and not being considered as extremely valuable, but from my point of view, this has always been a mistake. We should definitely invest in Africa and Europe being a part, in a way, very much the same geopolitical area. So we definitely, like also Latvia, I agree, we should invest more in understanding and learning about the problems.
Good morning, dear ambassador. I am Sunil, the first year student from international relations, and my question is about the Nord Stream, second Nord Stream. So it is, I think it is one of the greatest aim of Russia in Europe. So what is the action steps of your country and also with Ukraine together to prevent this?
Nord Stream is a serious problem. I think not only for Ukraine or for the Baltics, it's a serious problem for the European Union. At first, it's never good when different EU member states perceive the issue differently. Let's say Germany and Latvia, or Germany or Poland. My feeling is that Nord Stream will be completed at the end of the day. Actually, before the American sanctions, I would say the pipeline was completed around 95%. So at this moment, I get my own feeling that it will be completed. The Germans have always stated that they perceive it as an economic project. I believe even they understand this is not an economic project. From my point of view, it's very little what we can do at this moment. But for the Ukrainian state, from my point of view, it's very important to think already at this moment, what will it mean to be without Russian present gas, for example? How to compensate these 2 or 3 billion euros, which are every year pouring in the Ukrainian state budget. So you will need to think what kind of alternatives you have at the end of the day. But at this moment, from my point of view, yes, our political position, Ukrainian political position, the Polish political positions are clear, but I don't believe that at this moment we can stop the project as such. So the aim of Russia is very simple. At first, they want, obviously, bypass the territory of Ukraine. So taking away these 2 or 3 billion euros, as I was saying. The second, they want to tie Europe much closer, let's say, to their gas needs, specifically for Germany. From my point of view, it's very much a political project because Germany's geopolitical position has always been trying to engage Russia. So I believe many politicians in Berlin believe that actually through the completion of the Nord Stream, actually Germans will get some leverage over the Russian decision-making process. It might be true, it might not be true at the same time. At this moment, the loser is obviously our part of the region. And as I was saying, I don't think this is a good project for the future of our country. It's not good at all. But regardless of that, we are anyway staying in the same position like we were, let's say, 5 or 7 years ago. And our politicians, we always agree this is a bad project. But unfortunately, nothing changed on that. So I think Ukraine must be realistic what's going to happen and search for alternatives to the situation. That's the example of what
I have 2 questions for you.
Sure.
First question is about, in your opinion, how many years we need to be in the European Union and in NATO? And the second question is about the situation of that between airplane who in Minsk and in the news I read that your country sent ambassador to home at Belarus and the same Belarus, the ambassador from Latvia at home to your country. And for me, it's a very interesting situation in the world. And tell you that very nice that you speak Ukrainian and you understand our language. Thank you.
Let's start with the second question. Something must happen in Minsk. It's extremely dangerous. The plane was close to the say, air zone between Belarus and Lithuania, and he was reverting back to the airport of Minsk. They was very clear to arrest one of the founders of Next channel, obviously. Let's be realistic, there was no threat. We don't know what was happening on the plane as such, but the key aim was to arrest one of the opponents of Lukashenko's regime. And given that Lukashenko is 26 years as president, for him it was personally important. So, Belarus is an extremely important country for all of us. It's a part of Grand Duchy of Lithuania, a historical part. So we have, let's say, common Korea, let's say. We are very much part of the same tree. And nowadays, for example, if you want to develop Latvian, Ukrainian practice relations without Belarus, it's impossible. Let's say, just imagine, Air Baltic flying from Riga to Kiev, if we bypass Belarus, we go through Poland, it's much more time, it's much more expensive. So Belarus is something what is extremely important country. I think the fact what happened is we should react somehow. Allowing the government of Belarus, you never know when you will be flying over the territory of Belarus, then you will be stopped or, let's say, pushed to come to the ground. So this is something extraordinary even for any type of international relations. So it should be absolutely condemned and some action should be taken. Ukraine becoming a part of the European Union, I think there are two parts of this question. The first is political part. German, French, Dutch can say we are ready to welcome Ukraine. Let's assume, ideally. So you need a political decision at first. The second, from my point of view, which is even more important, any country to be accepted as a member of the European Union should complete or should pass some kind of legislation and implement it into practice. So which means, if I were Ukrainian, I will never expect any political decision, because I think sometimes I get a feeling that in here many people believe if Germans and French would say they will accept us, we will become a part of the European Union. It's true and not true at the same time. The key issue is about making reforms in the country, making here a European society. Let's say Finland and Sweden are not members of NATO. But if they would like to be members of NATO, they will be immediately accepted. Why? Because their standards are fully compatible with the principles of NATO. So you should try to build your country where Germans and French or Italians would say, we don't have any doubts, they are ready. If you are putting hopes that there will be a political decision, it might not come. So the question is about transforming your society, transforming your system, so you become a part of the European family. And as I was mentioning in my intervention speech, don't take it personally when, let's say, some governments in Europe are saying, no, Ukraine don't have a perspective. Don't do it. You have a perspective. But the question is about transforming the country. Why they don't see the perspective? Because they see you are uninformed country. They see you have problems with justice. They see problems for foreign investors. So try to do everything. They don't have any arguments against you. And then this political decision will come. So this is a big discussion about стулья утром или вечером. You remember that in the last стулья, he wanted to buy the стулья from Nixon, and he was saying, сначала деньги, потом стулья. And he was saying, давайте сначала стулья, мы потом деньги. So at first you must deliver these chairs, and then the rest.
Дякую. Вечором гроші, зранку крісло. Зранку гроші, вечором крісло.
Ну да.
Дякую вам. Хто ще бажає?
Там було питання.
Good evening. My name is Irina. I'm a freshman and I'm studying international economic relations. And my question to you is following. What benefits the Republic of Latvia has gained and from which risks and challenges has it been protected in terms of economic growth since joining the European Union? Thank you.
It's very difficult question in a way. We have lost tens of thousands of people who emigrated after we joined the European Union. But, without joining the European Union, Ukraine is losing its citizens as well. So it's not a question about the European Union as such. The problem is, when the Soviet Union collapsed, I remember, you remember that in the end of the 80s and beginning of the 90s, we were extremely poor countries. Even $5 was the value at that time already. So we are now catching up, I would say, to the European Union. Gradually, we are catching up. Our level of GDP per capita is very much the same like in Hungary or Slovakia. I would say this is not a bad level, given that they have their own countries. Let's say, unlike us, we were part of the Soviet Union. But the European Union is providing every country a clear platform of rules. It provides financial incentives. So the European Union doesn't solve all problems for your country, but it really helps. I see every Latvian house, so everything is nice and clear and shining, everything is really great. But the European Union will never care about your educational system, about your health system, about your pension system. So they are providing a platform, some kind of rules of the game. So I think we have got a lot from the European Union. But one thing that I would mention, as I was mentioning before, the European Union obviously opened borders. So we have lost 10% of our population. But we would have lost it anyway. So the only solution is we should at least reach the level of richer EU member states. Then people will not be leaving. Many Ukrainians want to work in Latvia. And we have pretty strict conservative immigration policy in comparison with Poland. Why? Your average salary is around 400 euros, luckily 400 euros, in our case it's 800 euros. Then you look at Sweden or Ireland, it's 2,000 euros. So people will be searching for ways how to become richer, how to earn more money. So as a result, it's the division between Europe East and West, which lasted from 1945, let's say, to 1990, is still there. Look at the eastern part of Germany. The federal, let's say, western part of Germany has put trillions of euros, and you still have differences between the eastern part of Germany and the western part of Germany. So we have a long way to go. And at the same time, I really believe Ukraine is a country, prospective country where to live, and Latvia is a prospective country. А тут было, да.
First, we have experience of business communication and education, so the question is related to like sharp. What qualities and abilities do you consider essential for a translator in the role of politics?
Translator in model politics or expert in model politics?
For a translator in the role of politics.
I might sound very conservative here, but the first is the reading. Reading permanently. You know, for me coming to Ukraine, I learned so many new things before coming here. And when I arrived here and understood that I know very little. You know, I would say, try to follow key news channels, even on a daily basis. BBC, CNN, it provides a general overview of what's going on in the world. The second is, try to identify your interests, which is your part of interest. Reading and learning is really the key. What I would advise is learning languages. We came from the same sort of system where German, learning French. This is finding the way, what is an interest for you. Polish is still important, obviously, for this part. But it's constant and regular learning, reading, books, newspapers, no other way. Practice is important. But in any country you come, you start working, you must know something about the country itself. You must know something about the history. You must know what is uniting us, what is disuniting us. So, let's say Ukraine for Latvia people, it's a very easy country, in general. I imagine I would go to the Czech Republic, for example, maybe much less important country for us than Ukraine. I would need to actually learn everything from the scratch in a way. So this is a constant learning, and this is something which must go through the lifetime. And nowadays I see that people in our times, we didn't have any laptops or Facebook or anything. People are reading books all the time. This is really maybe sounds very conservative, but there's nothing better than returning back to the traditional just reading. And imagine that given the role how the youth now perceives many things, you will get a lot of advantages. You can play games on the one hand, let's say, but if you are reading a book too, you will get anyways disadvantages at the end of the day. So nothing changes. These modern technologies, in a way, yes, they provide a lot of opportunities, but at the end of the day, we return back. It's only Nanya to Nanya. Nothing else. And by the way, Asian students, why they are very often better than European students? Because they want to get better results. They want to study more. They want to work harder. This is a serious problem for Europeans.
Good evening, my name is Marta Standard. I'm studying this year of the tourism, and I want to ask you about tourism in your country, because Latvia is very nice and wonderful place for our tourists and tourists from other countries. And I want to ask you about what you think about how will be tourism, develop in the future in your country under quarantine conditions?
These depend on tourism, obviously, and the role of tourism is growing in my country more and more every year. At first, we are part of the Baltic states. Let's say people are coming to Tallinn, Riga, and Vilnius, so they don't come specifically for Riga. Unlike Russia. For Russians, it's different. They want to go to Yurmala, or to Riga. For Ukrainians, they can make a difference, but otherwise, we are part of the same region. I would a bit reply differently, saying that Ukraine is doing very little for development of tourism, for example, unlike Latvia. I would say Lviv, yes, I can praise Sadovik, the local head of public administration. Lviv Oblast is investing quite a lot, because probably you have even more unique historical and nature objects than you have in Latvia, for example. If you look at Lviv, you can notice castles, mountains, water, so many things which can be solved. Tourism is an important part of our economy, but in Latvia, I would say this is still Riga. People are largely going to the capital of Latvia, so obviously when COVID restrictions will be, I hope, cancelled, so we will see again the return of tourism. Because for such cities like Riga, Tallinn, it's extremely difficult to survive without foreign tourism. In Ukraine, it's a bit different. In Kyiv, people come from Dnipro, Zaporizhzhia, they stay for overnight, so hotels are booked, so people are. In Latvia, this is not the case. We cannot survive without foreign tourism as such. So for us, the key issue is really somehow to find this right way between vaccination and collective immunity. Without that, it will be extremely difficult. And Riga is, in general, the transit center of the Baltic states. So we always have more flights, we have more passengers. So it's in our interest.
студента третього курсу. Моє питання буде стосуватися такої події, як відкриття почесного консульства Латвійської Республіки в Пойканса. Я хотіла би задати декілька питань. Які головні функції даного консульства в цьому регіоні? Як на вашу думку, чи зможете консульство стати центром співпраці України з Латвією? І наскільки ефективна діяльність почесних консулів в даному регіоні?
It's very important. I hope it will become a center of cooperation between Latvia and Donetsk Oblast. Why we opened the honorary consulate in Slavia? We understand how difficult it is to live in Donetsk Oblast and Lugansk Oblast. We understand. This so-called border we are having now, is artificial border, it has never been. You have Gorlivka on one side, Oretz on another side. So this is a huge tragedy for the Ukrainian nation. But we understand it's important for the government of Ukraine to develop the territory which is under Ukraine direct control. Let's say Kramatorsk, Slavia, Popasna, Severodonetsk. And we saw the opening of this consulate as a political step. And I was telling during the opening, I would like to see this consulate to be transferred to Donetsk, when it will come back to the part of Ukraine. So this is a temporary consulate. But this is there because currently Donetsk is under occupation. Second, there is Latvian flag, so you can feel the presence of European Union in Latvia. The third, we have aides to the honorary consulate who are aides there permanently, where you can obtain information about Latvia economically, politically, the field of education. And last, what we will try to bring some exhibitions there, for example, from Latvia, where people from Slavia can come and see about our achievements in the field of economy, about our history, culture, and art. So, the honorary consulate in Slavia should become a focal point of cooperation between Latvia and Donetsk Oblast. So this is very important. We have a honorary consulate in Lviv, the oldest one, more than 15 years. But we understand that politically, probably, honorary consulate in Slavia is more important than honorary consulate in Lviv. Because in Lviv, in general, we don't have any serious problem.
Хто ще бажає?
Доброго дня, мене звати Тарас, я студент другого курсу. І моє питання звучить так, чому досить інтеграція Латвії, як і двох інших балтійських держав до Європейського Союзу так неефективно впроваджується в Україні, зокрема в сфері боротьби з корупцією та тіньовою економікою? Дякую.
We are all products of the same Soviet and socialist system. What is the difference between Latvia and Ukraine? We have the same problems. But in Ukraine, there are much different. Believe me, in Slovakia, Poland, Hungary, the situation is also very difficult. If the country is poor, let's say, and I would say, Latvia maybe not, and Ukraine are not poor countries globally, but on the European level, they are not rich countries. There will always be incentives for corruption. Let's say in Denmark, in Finland, the level of corruption is very, very, very low. So this is a question of welfare. And at the same time, if you don't fight the corruption, the welfare will never come as well. So you will have problems with that. So this is the heritage we are having. The difference, as I was saying, I had a very good friend, the deputy foreign minister of Moldova, and I was telling him the same. It's not such a huge difference between our countries. The problem is, we are maybe smaller. We wanted, and by the way, we understood, we want to be a part of the European Union. We understood that if we don't fix the problem of corruption at decent civilized levels, we are not going to be members of the European Union. We receive huge assistance from Denmark, Sweden, and Finland. So we had our advantages. But believe me, this is a real problem also for us.
Хто ще бажає? Дорогі мої студенти, унікальність цього моменту в тому, наскільки щирими були відповіді Юріса Пойканса, надзвичайно повноважного посла дружної нам країни НАТО. Сьогодні ми побачили, а ще краще почули, наскільки є важливим саме комунікація між державами для того, щоб виробляти стратегічні наміри двох держав і узгоджувати саме можливість жити в спільному європейському домі. Я сьогодні хочу вам подякувати, Юріс, від студентів, від Харківського викладацького складу. Шкодуємо, що таке мало часу, шкодуємо, що пандемія вносить саме корективи, і ми в умовах таких певних карантинних обмежень проводимо нашу зустріч. Але я думаю, що та зустріч буде розміщена питаннями, які ви дали в близькому відсутні, на певних інформаційних каналах. Наші студенти зуміють ширше знайомитися з позицією України в Латвії, з позицією політичного корпусу, з цими новими можливостями для України і, зокрема, для молоді. Молодь змінює світ. Я думаю, що сьогоднішня зустріч дає їм ще більше впевненості в тому, що потрібно працювати і потрібно, як сказав посол, оволодіти знаннями. Не бійтеся черпати нові знання для того, щоб реалізувати свої наміри. Тому, дорогі наш посол, дорогі друже, ми хочемо від імені наших студентів, давайте так сюди, від імені
Я дуже вдячний вам за цікаве запитання. Всього найкращого.
Ми сьогодні маємо унікальну можливість, почувши ваші відповіді, почувши вашу доповідь, черпанути для себе наше новітнє бачення. І в знак сьогоднішньої зустрічі прийміть цей маленький знак уваги нашого університету. І я думаю, що тут є ті люди, які по-новому відкрили для себе країну Латвії. Адже щирість посла дає щирість всього латвійського народу. Thank you. До нових зустрічей.
До нових зустрічей.
Студенти, тут рішення, унікальні а це мені це без характеру.
Давайте зробимо спільну.
Або давайте зробимо, друзі, давайте зробимо спільну фотографію. Підходьте сюди. Так, ходіть сюди, студенти. Ніхто не виходить. І рахуємо до нього.
Ну, давайте сідайте, я не
Приставайте сюди ззаді, Павло.
Прошу, заходьте на другий, на сходинку. Піднімайте на сходинку.
Ну, Василь, дайте крісло.
Так, увага, шановні студенти. Прошу, лицем, якщо можна, швидше трошки. Шановний правий, студенти з правого краю, трошки вище і лицем, оберніться.
Увага. Ви всі пізнавані в масах.
Що, бачите, я студент. Посол легко йде на контакт. Він каже, ви читаєте, а ми тут. Де ви ще бачили такого чоловіка?
сейчас бороться за любого студента. Потому что все абсолютно.
Як бешка. Ще один прийшов.
На яку вже годину?
На півтретій.
То хто?
Не знаєш.
Там все одно. Ще поки мені не казали, не знаю, може теж мене.
Може.
Вас вчора не було, то я тут вже навчилась керувати ЗУНУ.
У мене таке відчуття, що в мене тут приписка останнім часом. Мені одного дня треба було просто
Чого?
прогнути.
І вже зробили паніку. І іменно на той день.
Ні, я паніку не робив. Просто я...
Ні, я скажу
Розумієте?
до вас, просто що не було кому. Я ж
А
прийшов.
воно того нікого і нема. А в нас же нікого нема. У нас же відділ... все. Романця нема, бджола
А я
вкусила.
чула за це.
Він такий,
Не буває, пішла якась.
як горбун із Нотр-Дама.
Добре, гарного дня.
Дякую вам також.